Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. This happened tonight, and I'm not sure how to process the whole situation. I was driving home from a friend's house, and I was taking the freeway, but I was driving carefully since it was raining pretty hard. Driving home was going to take at least 30 minutes, but it turned to almost an hour ride just because of the rain. I was about 10 minutes away when I noticed this gray Chrysler van acting off. We were at an intersection, about to turn left, but the light was red. I was behind him, and the thing is, at this intersection, there are 2 lanes that allow you to turn left. We were both on the second lane when all of a sudden, he awkwardly decided to slowly change lanes to the one beside me and almost ran the red light. I could tell that he hit his brakes pretty hard, and I thought that it was weird or that maybe that dude was drunk. When the light turned green, I proceeded with caution because he was giving me a weird feeling. I was about 6 minutes away from home at this point, when all of a sudden, he turned on his emergency light on. I could see that he was pulling over to the shoulder, so I slowed down, and since we were driving on one lane, I proceeded with caution and then slowly passed him. Keep in mind, it was nighttime and raining a lot, so not a lot of cars were around us. And as soon as I passed him, I looked at my front view mirror and I saw that he turned off his emergency lights and then started to follow behind me. I really felt off about it. And while driving, I saw he was flashing his lights and thought that maybe my lights were off. But that's not possible because I could still see the light projecting from my car onto the road. At this point, I'm thinking that he is just messing with me. But that's when I noticed that he started to tailgate me. He almost hit me like 3 times, and then I started to panic. At this point, I knew that I had to get away from him. And for a second I thought that I was being dramatic, but every time that I would change lanes, he would change lanes too. I managed to speed off and take the exit off the freeway. I was less than a minute away now, but I didn't go home yet. I parked by a construction building near my house and then decided to wait a bit to see if he would follow me off the freeway. Thankfully he didn't, and I waited at least 5 minutes just to make sure. After that, I was able to go home safely. I told my boyfriend what had happened, and we double-checked that my car was okay. The lights were in fact working, and so did my taillights. There was nothing wrong with my car, and nothing for that dude to have any reason to flash his lights at me. I was really freaked from this whole situation. I'm not sure what I did to make him act the way he did, but I just hope that no one encounters that crazy man out in the streets. So this is my first post here. It's kinda long, but a scary experience from 15 years ago. By the way, I'm a 29-year-old female now. So anyway, I'm not from the US and I'm from a smaller country. And when I was 14, I got a missed call off a number that I didn't recognize one day. And being 14, I never called, I only texted. So I asked this number who it was. The reply I got was that they had called the wrong number by mistake. No big deal, except they started to try and text me every single day, little things like how are you and etc. I was naive and I played along when I was bored. I made up a fake name and even sent him a fake photo of some random girl off the internet just because he bugged me so much and I didn't want him to know me because, stranger danger and all of that. but I did tell them that I was 14. He never called me again, and I had no intention in calling him, so we just texted here and there, and he told me that he was 17. He was very intense in terms of telling me how I was too nice for him and he was so lucky to text me. I was never the mushy type, and it always seemed like a cheesy film scene when he went on like this. But he was very persistent. I could get up to 100 messages a day, and I might reply to 20 of them. I have seen no reason to be worried, until one day I told my friend about this guy that I was texting, and then we decided to prank call him. And this guy answered, and he sounded at least like my father's age. We freaked out and I stopped texting him. He figured it out that it was me who called him because of my sudden ghosting, and he put 2 and 2 together. To this day, I don't know how. It's not like today where tracking is somewhat easier, especially since I gave this guy a fake name and my phone number wasn't attached to any of my social medias back then. I told him the part of the country I lived in, but not what town or any other details. He kept calling me, and of course I ignored him. But then one day in school, me and my friend who did the prank call on him, we got several messages. When she prank called him, we forgot to put her number in private. There were missed calls and text messages asking us where we were, did we like him, telling her to tell me to come meet him, and it was very intense. She obviously freaked out as much as I did, then even more so when he sent us both a picture of our school, and we lost it. There's 6 schools in our town, and how we got the right one, I will never know. We stayed after school to study in fear that he was outside. My math teacher was a family friend, and I waited for her to come around just to ask her for a ride home for us. We went to my house, turned on our phones to a crazy amount of messages, all saying that he would meet us one day and that he loved me. He told us that he traveled 4 hours and then couldn't understand why we didn't come out to say hi. I was petrified to tell my mother, so we decided to ditch our phone numbers and get new phone numbers and never utter a word of it again. For the next few weeks, I lived in a world of constant fear and anxiety. I couldn't walk alone, even though I knew it was probably impossible for him to know who I really was. But in the end, I told my mother, and then we went to the police because I knew that this guy had bad intentions. The phone number I had for him was a burner phone basically. I think that's what it's called in the US. It had no details attached to it, and it was impossible to really look into it any further. Nonetheless, we made a statement, and that was it. So yeah, the man pretending to be a 17-year-old boy who drove 4 hours to meet a 14-year-old girl. Let's never, ever meet. So I lived in a pretty nice area with my husband and some family friends. We lived there for a few years with nothing bad happening around us, and it felt like a very safe neighborhood. And now for context, I'm a very short white female and I am considered disabled, even though I look fine, but I could never really beat anyone up since my disability has limited my activity severely. Anyways, on to the story. This happened about a year before we moved. I had some stories pop up on Facebook of some traffickers that were targeting both women and children at a local store that we lived right behind. I was freaked out, so I made it a point to not go to the store without my husband. I still got the news articles about people being followed, grabbed, and kidnapped from the store, but I felt pretty safe as long as I didn't go anywhere without my husband. I was going to work one day, and I worked about 15 minutes away from my house. It was a call center kinda out in the middle of nowhere. There were fields every which way, and I worked the afternoon shift and was one of the last people to leave at night. I had to stop and get gas, and I was a little freaked out because I was scared to go anywhere without my husband. But I wasn't going to make it to work and back home, so I had no choice. I stopped at the station and was slightly relieved that it was super busy. I got out, I started pumping my gas, when this big van pulled up in the spot next to mine. A guy got out and started pumping his own gas as well. Then he walked around the pump and got in between my car and me. He smiled and said, "Wow, your car is so clean. How do you get it so clean?" I was flabbergasted at the question. My car was a mess. It was dirty with bugs and stuff on it. "Why don't you show me how you get it so clean?" He reached out to touch me, but I jerked back. Another car then pulled up behind me, and a guy got out. I think he freaked the other guy out because he walked back to his van. I quickly finished pumping my gas and I got into my car. I locked the doors, and I sped away. A few minutes later, I look out my window and the van is behind me. He was riding my bumper pretty much, and I could see the guy smiling and laughing with some other guy. I was pretty freaked out, but I figured that he was going to the freeway. We passed the freeway, but he kept following me. Now I was very freaked out. The only place on this road now is my work. I called my husband, but he didn't answer since he was also at work. I was freaking out, so I picked up speed and I continued going to work. I kept looking back and the van was still there, just a little farther back. I made it to work, and it was a large building with lots of cars in the parking lot. I parked right in front of the doors in a handicapped spot, and then I ran inside. I looked back through the locked doors, and I saw the guy stop in the front looking pissed. I ran up to my department, and I went right up to a friend who was an ex-military. He carried multiple guns on him at all times, and I cried as I told him what happened. I got to work, but I was still freaked out all day. We closed, and I was walking down to my car. I peeked out the windows and saw the white van. I couldn't see anyone in there, and I wasn't even sure if it was the same van. I ran back to my department, and I told my friend what was going on. He pulled out his gun and walked me outside. The van had moved now. It moved right behind my car. My friend walked me to his car. We then got in, and he drove me right up to my car. He then followed me all the way home and sat outside until I was inside the house. I could see the van following us, but once we got past the freeway, he turned onto it. The next afternoon on my way to work, I passed the same gas station as before, and the van pulled out. Again, they followed me to work, but they turned away once I got to the parking lot. This went on for about a week. They would follow me to work, leave, then be outside when I was leaving, and my friend would walk me out. My buddy told me that they were probably trying to learn my schedule so they could figure out a time to jump me. He insisted that I take one of his guns, just in case he wasn't there at work to walk me out. I didn't want it though, as I was afraid that if I had it, then I would get pulled over for something, and then get in trouble for having a gun not in my name and not having a permit for it. I was telling my husband that evening about how this van was still following me, and he suggested that I should call the cops and let them know. I honestly don't know why I didn't think of that. So the next morning when I was about to get ready for work, I called and I told them everything. And then I left for work. Just like clockwork, the van pulled out of the gas station and then started following me. We were on the long stretch of the road that nothing was on when I spotted a car parked off to the side of the road. I passed, and then the van passed, and then the lights on the car came on, and then the van was pulled over. I later found out that the men following me had several warrants of rape and attempted kidnapping. The back of the van had knives, rope, gloves, mask, chloroform, and some kind of other sketchy crap in it. The cops believed that I was going to be their next target. And when I got to my work, my friend wasn't there. He was sick. I am so glad that I called the cops that morning because I don't think I would have made it home if he wasn't there to walk me out. Anyways, that's my creepy story, and I hope you guys liked it. It's 100% true, and we have since moved out and lived in a not so nice area, but so far, I haven't noticed any creepy people around me. But I always carry pepper spray whenever I go out. I'm a 24-year-old female, and I'm not sure if I'm being irrational in my fear, so I thought that it would be best to post about it and see if others agree or not. I love going on walks by myself. I struggle with mental health issues, and my walks alone, especially on sunny days, have been one of the only things to help alleviate my spirals and such. About a week ago, I had gone on one of my walks like normal. I started it, and then I noticed a guy on a motorized bike passed by the street in front of me, and had the thought of, that's the same guy that was hanging out at the gas station, the one who was eyeing me the last time that I went on a walk. But other than that, I was also like, I'm sure he's just going on a ride. Don't think too much about it. I walked down a few blocks just listening to my music and enjoying the sun when I saw him again 2 blocks down, crossing the street, but this time he had stopped in the middle of the road mid-crossing the street, and I saw him just looking in my direction. This set an alert off in my head, so I took my headphones off while continuing to walk so I could be a bit more aware of my surroundings. I decided to turn right on the block that I was on because I was not wanting to meet up with that guy. And as I got down towards the end of the block, I heard his bike again. So I turned out to see if he was in eyeshot. He was. He was at the church on the next block over, on the same street, parked, and he was looking in my direction again. I only looked for a couple of seconds because I was scared that if he saw me looking at him, he would think that I wanted to talk to him. The road I was on leads directly to an isolated road where there is a large field and not many houses there. That is the usual path I take on my walks, but I had a very strong gut feeling telling me not to go that way this time. So I had turned the corner onto the street that takes me directly back to my house. It felt almost as if he was waiting to see which direction I was going to take, because as soon as I turned, I heard his bike rev up again. I was starting to feel quite panicked, so I started to rapid-fire text my boyfriend, just as someone needs to know my location kind of thing. And as I got to the block in front of my house, ready to cross the street to head home, I saw him a block down to my right yet again, crossing the street, and he was looking around him as if he was searching. I quickly crossed the street before he saw me, and I ran inside my house. Am I being irrational in my fear? I will say that I have PTSD and deal with quite severe hypervigilance because of it, but the gut feeling was so intense. It was almost like a weird intuition thing. I haven't gone on a walk since it happened, and I keep pepper spray on me everywhere I go. But I am of small stature, and I feel as though that I don't have much strength to be able to fight off an attack, so I'm just spooked right now. But I thank you for listening to me ramble. My parents are divorced since 2 to 3 years now. They had a pretty good couple life till I was 13, and then big fights happened at least once a month. I never had a good relationship with my dad, mostly because we had different opinions and points of views, so it was a miracle if we said good morning to each other. When my parents got the divorce, my mom decided that she didn't want any contact with him anymore. So, he started to talk to me to try and get a new start, but it was all just an excuse to try and manipulate me to reach my mom, so I didn't want to speak to him again. Now, every time that I go out, I feel like he's spying on me. I really feel like someone is watching me all the time. One time, I was walking my dog, and he was just next to me, and he tried to scare me with his car, like he was acting like he was going to push me with it. And today, he was there on the same street as me, and I started to walk super fast so he couldn't follow me. But after that, I saw him in his car, going around my house. I'm so scared of him showing up at my work and trying to speak with me. He doesn't know where I work yet, but what if he follows me there? I don't know what to do, because I've been seeing him a lot now, and it's impossible that it's just a coincidence. I moved a lot growing up, and by the time freshman year of high school came around, I had moved 7 or so times, and I was about 1.5 years into my most recent move in this story. I had found a pretty close group of friends in middle school, and we all went to high school together. I met them through one of those close friends. They were in a band together, and even though he was almost 4 years older than us, we welcomed him into our group. Sam was easily twice my size, tall and heavy-set, and originally kind of intimidating. Although, I was never afraid of large men before him. Well, that's a lesson learned. I kinda had a bad home life, so I would spend as much time as I could at school, sometimes hanging around the school campus until 6 or 7 at night with this same friend group. The 3 of us lived in the same direction, and we would walk the half-hour trip together until our paths split. One slightly colder evening, Sam offered to walk me home since the others had gone home already. I just thought that he was being a gentleman. Then, he mentioned something from a previous move when he lived in California. He said that he didn't walk a friend home once, and something horrible happened. He then left it at that, and I let him walk me home. We got a lot closer after that. We bonded over both living in California and then exchanged numbers. He would message me late into the night about his depression and also his self-harm, and I just wanted to help him. A few months later, he tried asking me out. It was this big romantic gesture. He learned a Disney song on the ukulele and then sang it to me in the cafeteria. But I was already dating someone, and when I turned him down, he got angry. A freaky, quiet, twitchy kind of angry, and I felt so bad. I then started seeing him everywhere. We were still friends, we still hang out in groups, but I would pass him on the street walking somewhere, and a few minutes later, I would see that he changed directions and then had started to follow me. He would walk me to classes by following me in passing period at a distance. I started to minimize the group time that we spent together, and he would follow me more. I had friends meet me at each class and walk me to my next one because I didn't feel safe, and he knew where I lived. Then, he started to talk, not to me, but to my mutual friends about that one girl in California who he tried to walk home. At first, he just shared my name, some crazy coincidence. Then, she had the same brown curly hair and blue eyes, and every time he rambled about her, she became more and more like me. And then he said what happened. Over literal weeks, this fantasy evolved. They were walking home, and they were jumped by some guy with a knife. It was a robbery gone wrong on her birthday, January 24th, which was coincidentally also my birthday. And then she died horribly, and he couldn't react in time. She bled out in his arms. Sarah, who has brown curly hair and blue eyes, my name, my birthday, and sounds just like me, bled out in his arms. Each retelling added more and more detail, and this guy with a sick fantasy about my death would follow me around and knew where I lived. My boyfriend was abusive, mentally and physically, but I stayed as close to him as I could whenever I could, because if the worst happened, I know for sure that he could throw a punch. I never felt safe at our school or in our little town walking home from school. One day at school, he had a breakdown. He freaked out and ran out of the school in a panic. I was sent after him, and I found him curled up on the floor. I got closer. I knew about his anxiety and depression, and my safety aside, I wanted to make sure he was okay. It was then that he told me this horrifying story that I had been hearing from my mutual friends, with added details. We had been walking home from a concert in California. We passed a dark alley and a homeless man came out with a rusty knife and then asked for anything valuable. I fumbled for my phone. I didn't have anything else on me, and he thought that I was calling the cops. Then he stabbed me. Once, twice, again and again. And Sam just stood there horrified. He then told me that he saw red and grabbed a broken glass bottle near my body and attacked the homeless man. He killed him with his own knife. He told me he killed someone. My stalker killed someone. It didn't matter how messed up he was anymore. I didn't care if it was a fantasy or real. I didn't care how it would affect his mental health anymore. I wanted to go to the police. I was scared for my life. My friends convinced me to go to the school counselor first. And the morning we went and told them everything. The stalking, the stories, how he admitted to murder, and that he was the reason why they moved from California. How I was afraid for my life and I wanted to call the police. The counselor didn't take us seriously. She went to the principal. And the principal, which is not a mental health expert, called Sam in to talk about the accusations. The principal then informed me that he did not think that Sam had any kind of mental illness or that I was in any danger, and then that was that. I lost faith in adults, and I gave up on going to the police. I stayed with my friend walking me in between classes and hiding behind my abusive boyfriend. I was looking behind me every single step of my walk home that year. The counselors ended up gaslighting us to the point where this all feels like a fever dream now, and that I would think that it's made up if it weren't for my journal entries recording the events of my growing panic and the similar stories from my friend group. So, Sam, let's not meet again. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.